In a small village called Mvezo in the green hills of South Africa, a boy named Nelson was born. His family was part of the Xhosa people, and they lived simply, surrounded by wide fields and singing rivers. The days felt slow and peaceful. Nelson's father was a respected leader in the village. He taught Nelson about fairness and honor. Every morning, Nelson watched his father greet people with kindness, no matter if they were rich or poor. Nelson learned early that respect was important. At home, Nelson helped his mother with chores. He carried water from the river and collected wood for cooking fires. Sometimes, while he worked, he listened to old stories told by the elders. These stories made Nelson dream about being wise and helping his people. When Nelson was 7, he started school in a small classroom made from mud bricks. The teacher wrote words on a chalkboard, and the children listened with wide eyes. Nelson was curious. He wanted to understand the world beyond his village. One day, the teacher called him Nelson. This was new for him. His real name was Rolihala, which meant pulling the branch of a tree. But in school, everyone started calling him Nelson. He wondered how names could change how people saw you. Nelson made friends quickly. He was quiet, but he listened carefully. He noticed when someone felt sad or left out. Even as a child, he wanted to help others feel included, and his friends soon trusted him with their secrets and worries. School was not always easy. Nelson's family did not have much money, and sometimes he had to walk far to reach the classroom. On cold mornings, his feet hurt from the long walk. Still, he never missed a day, believing that learning could bring a better future. In the evenings, Nelson's mother cooked corn and vegetables over a small fire. The family ate together, sharing simple meals. After dinner, Nelson would look up at the stars, wondering how big the world really was. He felt both small and hopeful. As he grew, Nelson noticed the differences between people in his country. Some families had more than others. Some children had shoes, while others, like Nelson, went barefoot. He started to ask his father why life was not always fair. His father explained that the world was not perfect, but that everyone could choose to do what was right. These words stayed with Nelson. He promised himself to always try to be honest and just, no matter what happened. When Nelson's father became ill, life at home changed. The house grew quiet, and his mother looked tired. Nelson tried to help more, carrying water and caring for his younger siblings. He learned how important family was during hard times. After his father died, Nelson and his mother moved to another village. It was a new place, filled with new faces and customs. Nelson felt nervous, but he remembered his father's lessons about respect and kindness, and slowly made new friends. The chief of the village was a distant relative. He noticed Nelson's gentle nature and invited him to join the other boys in learning about leadership and tradition. Nelson listened to wise words, learning how leaders must care for their people. During these lessons, Nelson heard about justice and the need for courage. He learned that a good leader does not only think of himself, but always considers the needs of others. These lessons made a deep impression on Nelson's heart. Nelson began to help in the village, assisting elders with simple tasks. He listened to their problems and watched how decisions were made. He learned that leadership was not about being powerful, but about serving others and earning their trust. School became even more important to Nelson. He studied harder than ever, believing that knowledge could help him understand the world. He wanted to use his education to make a difference, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. Nelson often spent his afternoons reading books. He read about history, heroes, and distant lands. These stories filled his mind with ideas, and he dreamed of helping people in his country to live together peacefully with equal rights and respect. As Nelson grew older, his curiosity did not fade. He asked questions about everything he saw. He wondered why people were divided by skin color and language. He wanted to know why some people were treated better than others, even when they worked just as hard. One day, Nelson was chosen to go to a better school far from home. He was both excited and worried. He knew it was a big chance, but it meant leaving his mother and friends behind. He promised his mother that he would make her proud. The new school was larger and more strict. The teachers expected a lot from their students. Nelson felt lonely at first, missing the comfort of his home and the warm smiles of his family. But he remembered his mother's hope and did not give up. He worked hard in his classes, always trying his best. Some lessons were difficult, but Nelson learned that asking for help was not a weakness. Slowly, he built new friendships with students from different backgrounds and families. Nelson joined a group of students who talked about fairness and justice. They shared their dreams for a better country where all people could live together as equals. These conversations made Nelson feel less alone and gave him hope. Sometimes, Nelson faced challenges at school. Not everyone agreed with his ideas, and some students treated him differently because of where he came from. Nelson learned to be patient, choosing to listen before he spoke. This helped him become stronger. On weekends, Nelson visited home when he could. He shared stories about school and listened to news from his village. He missed the simple life, but he also felt proud of how much he was learning. Each visit gave him new strength to continue. As the years passed, Nelson finished his studies with good results. He wanted to help others even more, so he decided to move to the big city of Johannesburg to look for new opportunities. It was a huge change, full of noise and busy streets. In Johannesburg, Nelson found work as a clerk in a law office. He saw how laws could affect people's lives, sometimes helping, but often hurting those who had little power. Nelson realized that the world was even more complicated than he thought. He decided to study law, hoping to help people find justice. Each day, Nelson worked during the day and studied at night. It was a difficult time, and he often felt tired, but he believed in his dream and refused to give up. Nelson met many different people in the city. Some became friends, others were his teachers. He listened to their stories and learned about their struggles. Each story taught him something new about hope, courage, and the power of unity. Nelson soon joined a group of people who wanted to change unfair laws in their country. They believed that all people, no matter their skin color, deserve the same rights. Nelson was inspired by their courage, and he became more active in their meetings. At first, Nelson helped by organizing small events and listening to people's concerns. He learned how to speak clearly and carefully, sharing ideas in a way that brought people together. His words began to inspire hope in those around him. As Nelson's involvement grew, he saw that change would not come easily. Some people did not want things to change, and they tried to stop Nelson and his friends. Even when things were difficult, Nelson remembered his father's lessons and stayed calm. Nelson became a leader in the movement for equality. He worked with others to plan peaceful marches and share their message. Each step was full of risk, but Nelson believed that courage was stronger than fear, and that together they could make a difference. Sometimes, Nelson missed the peaceful days of his childhood. The struggle for fairness was hard and often lonely. But he remembered the elders' stories, and he knew that true change needed patience, hope, and the help of many hearts working together. Nelson's work began to get noticed. Some people admired his bravery, while others tried to silence him. He faced many challenges, including times when he was arrested and put in jail. These moments tested his spirit, but Nelson did not lose hope. While in jail, Nelson spent time thinking and reading. He reflected on his life and the lessons he had learned. He wrote letters to his family and friends, encouraging them to stay strong and to keep believing in the dream of equality. In prison, Nelson made new friends. Together, they shared stories and dreams for a better future. They helped each other through hard days, reminding one another that they were not alone. Even behind bars, Nelson continued to learn and grow. Years passed slowly. The world outside changed, and more people began to support the idea of fairness for all. Nelson's name became a symbol of hope for many people, even those he had never met. He understood that patience was important. Finally, after many years, Nelson was released from prison. He stepped out into the sunlight, feeling both old and new. He was grateful to see his family and friends again, but he knew that the journey was not finished. There was still work to do. Nelson returned to his community, welcomed by joyful faces and warm hugs. People listened to him with respect. He spoke about forgiveness and peace, teaching that true freedom comes from working together and letting go of anger. He helped lead the movement for democracy in his country. Nelson traveled, spoke with leaders, and worked hard to unite people who had once been divided. He believed that even after pain and struggle, people could choose to live together with respect. Nelson was finally chosen as the president of his country. It was a day of celebration, but also a day for new beginnings. As a leader, Nelson worked every day to build a nation where everyone could have hope and opportunity. He remembered the lessons from his childhood: kindness, patience, respect, and courage. He tried to live by these values, showing the world that even after a long road, people could change and grow. Each day, he listened to others and learned from them. Even as a leader, Nelson stayed humble. He visited schools, villages, and cities, talking to young people about the power of education and dreams. He reminded them that anyone could make a difference, no matter where they started in life. Nelson's life was not easy, but it was full of meaning. He taught people that real success comes from helping others and never giving up hope. Through his journey, Nelson showed that even the smallest steps can lead to great change. His story inspired people everywhere. They saw how a boy from a small village, with patience and hard work, could grow into a leader who changed the world. Nelson's life reminded everyone that the journey is just as important as the destination. And so, Nelson's legacy lived on, not just in the laws he helped to change, but in the hearts of those who believed in a better future. He proved that with courage and kindness, anyone could help to build a world filled with hope, respect, and peace. After becoming president, Nelson felt both joy and great responsibility. The world watched his every move, but in his heart, he remembered his small village and the long path he had walked. Each morning, he woke early, ready to face new challenges. His days were full of meetings and decisions. Nelson listened carefully to advisors and people from many backgrounds. He always tried to understand each person's worries and dreams, believing that a good leader must never stop listening and learning. At home, Nelson enjoyed quiet moments with his family. He cherished time with his grandchildren, telling them stories about his youth. He wanted them to know that courage and honesty were not just for leaders, but for everyone, every day. The work of rebuilding the country was not easy. There were old wounds and deep fears among people who had once been divided. Nelson encouraged his team to be patient, to forgive, and to find new ways to bring people together. He started programs to improve education and health care. He believed that every child deserved a chance to learn, to grow strong, and to chase their dreams, just as he once did in the fields of Mezzo. He visited schools, speaking with both teachers and students. Nelson often smiled, but inside he carried the memories of many struggles. He remembered the faces of friends who had not survived, who gave their lives for freedom. He honored them by working harder and treating every day as a gift. He loved to walk through gardens and parks, enjoying the simple beauty of nature. The colors of the flowers and the songs of birds helped him find peace, even when his mind was heavy with big decisions. These quiet moments reminded him of hope. Sometimes Nelson felt tired. Years in prison had taken their toll on his health, but he never complained. When he felt weak, he leaned on the strength of his people. Their smiles and determination inspired him to keep going no matter what. Nelson believed in the power of forgiveness. He met with people who once saw him as an enemy, choosing to speak calmly and kindly. He wanted everyone to see that true change was possible if hearts were open to new beginnings. He created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where people could share stories of pain and hope. This was not easy. Many tears were shed, but Nelson believed that healing could only happen when people spoke honestly and listened with care. He taught that mistakes could be lessons, not just for individuals, but for whole countries. He spoke about building bridges instead of walls, about shaking hands instead of turning away. His words slowly changed minds and opened hearts. Nelson often reminded his team that real success was not about power, but about service. He led by example, working long hours and refusing special treatment. He ate simple meals and treated every visitor with warmth and respect. At night, Nelson sometimes lay awake, thinking about the future. He worried about the children, the poor, and the sick. He wondered if he was doing enough. In those moments, he remembered his father's advice to do what was right, even when it was hard. Over time, South Africa began to heal. People who once lived in fear learned to trust each other again. Children from different backgrounds played together in parks and learned together in schools. Nelson saw this and felt hope for the future. He believed that the journey of freedom was never finished. There would always be new challenges and new lessons. He encouraged young people to dream boldly, to work hard, and to never stop learning, no matter how old they became. Nelson liked to say that he was not a saint, but just a person who tried to do his best. He wanted everyone to know that change starts with small acts of kindness and courage, not with grand gestures. He encouraged others to find their own ways to help. As he grew older, Nelson knew it was time to let new leaders take his place. He stepped down from the presidency, believing that others needed the chance to lead and bring fresh ideas. This was not easy, but Nelson trusted the next generation. In his retirement, Nelson continued to support causes close to his heart. He started foundations for children's health and education. He traveled to speak at events around the world, always sharing his message of peace and unity. Nelson enjoyed simple pleasures in his later years. He read books, wrote letters, and played with his great-grandchildren. Sometimes he returned to the countryside, breathing the fresh air and feeling the quiet strength of the land where he was born. Visitors from all over the world came to see Nelson. They wanted to thank him, to learn from him, and to hear his stories. Nelson welcomed everyone with a gentle smile, believing that every person, no matter where they came from, had something to share. He never stopped being a student of life. Even as an old man, Nelson listened to others, eager to hear new ideas and understand new problems. He believed that learning was a journey with no end and that everyone had something to teach. Nelson's story became a beacon of hope for people everywhere. His life showed that no matter how hard the path, it was possible to rise above anger and hate. He taught that patience and love could heal even the deepest wounds. He always encouraged others to be brave, to face their fears, and to speak out against injustice. He knew that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act even when afraid. Nelson believed that every person had the power to make a difference. As he looked back on his long life, Nelson felt grateful. He had known pain and loss, but also great love and joy. He believed that every experience, good or bad, had helped him grow stronger and wiser. He wished the same for everyone. On quiet evenings, Nelson would sit by a window, watching the sun set over the hills. He thought of his father and mother, of friends lost and found, and of the simple joys of childhood. He felt at peace, knowing he had tried to live well. Nelson's legacy did not end with his life. His actions and words inspired countless people to follow his example. They worked for peace, justice, and understanding in their own communities, carrying forward the torch of hope he had lit. In every corner of the world, children learned about Nelson Mandela. They read about his courage and kindness. Many dreamed of growing up to be leaders who could change the world, just as Nelson had done with his patience, hard work, and gentle strength. Though he faced many challenges, Nelson never lost his faith in people. He believed that inside every person there was a light that could shine brightly, even in the darkest times. His story became a reminder to never give up, even when the way forward was hard. In his final years, Nelson lived simply. He wore comfortable clothes and enjoyed quiet mornings. He liked to greet his neighbors, share tea with old friends, and listen to the laughter of children playing outside. These small joys filled his heart with peace. Sometimes Nelson visited schools and spoke to students. He told them that learning was a treasure and that their dreams mattered. He listened to their hopes and worries, encouraging them to study, work hard, and care for one another. He also visited hospitals and met with people who were sick or sad. Nelson held their hands, spoke gentle words, and reminded them that they were not alone. He believed that showing care, even in small ways, could lift a person's spirit and give them strength. Nelson believed that peace was something people must build every day, not just through big speeches, but through the choices they made in their homes, schools, and workplaces. He encouraged everyone to be patient and to keep hope alive. On special holidays, Nelson joined community celebrations. He danced, sang, and shared meals with people from all walks of life. These gatherings reminded him of the simple joys of togetherness, the same feelings he had known in his childhood village. He kept in touch with friends and fellow leaders from around the world. They often wrote to him, seeking advice or sharing news about their own work. Nelson answered with care, offering gentle wisdom and reminding them to never stop believing in justice. As Nelson's health began to fade, he spent more time resting. Still, he welcomed visitors when he could. He enjoyed listening to their stories and hearing about the good work happening in the world. These moments gave him hope for the future. He trusted that the seeds of peace and understanding he had helped plant would continue to grow. He believed that every generation could make the world a little kinder and fairer as long as they worked together and never gave up on their dreams. In the final days of his life, Nelson felt surrounded by love. Family and friends visited often, filling his home with laughter and gentle words. Nelson felt at peace, proud of the journey he had traveled and the lessons he had shared. When he closed his eyes for the last time, Nelson's story did not end. It lived on in the hearts and actions of millions, each person touched by his example. His life was a guiding light, showing the way toward hope, respect, and the power. Across South Africa, people gathered to honor Nelson's memory. They sang songs of freedom and remembered his gentle strength. Many promised to continue his work, building bridges of understanding and spreading kindness wherever they went. Nelson Mandela's journey was long and full of challenge, but he showed the world that one person's hope and hard work could inspire great change. His story became a reminder that with patience, courage, and love, anything is possible. And so, the spirit of Nelson Mandela lived on, encouraging people everywhere to keep dreaming, keep learning, and keep reaching out to others with open hearts. His life taught that no one walks alone, and together we can build a better world. Even after he left the presidency, Nelson Mandela's days remained full. He woke each morning with the same calm discipline he had learned as a boy, rising before the sun to enjoy a quiet moment alone. These peaceful mornings gave him time to think and prepare for the day ahead. As the world celebrated his work, Mandela chose to focus on small acts of kindness. He answered letters from children and adults, sending simple words of hope and encouragement. Each letter mattered to him, for he knew every person wanted to feel seen and heard. He enjoyed walks through his garden, where the soft wind carried the smell of flowers and the songs of birds. Mandela sometimes paused to watch the sunlight on green leaves. He found joy in these simple things, remembering the beauty he loved as a child in the countryside. Many days, visitors came from near and far. Some were leaders, others were young people with big dreams. Mandela greeted them warmly. He listened closely, often holding their hands, showing with every gesture that he truly cared about their thoughts and feelings. When he spoke, Mandela's words were gentle and steady. He often shared memories of his own journey, reminding his visitors that success never comes quickly. He explained that even small progress is important and that each day is a new chance to grow. He liked to encourage young people to stay in school and learn as much as they could. He told them how education opened doors for him and helped him understand the world's problems. He hoped they would use their knowledge to build peace and help others. At home, Mandela enjoyed time with his family. He laughed with his grandchildren and sometimes played quiet games with them. Their laughter made him feel young again. Mandela taught them to be patient and generous, just as his own parents taught him. He also spent time working on his foundation, which helped children get better health care and more chances for a good education. Mandela wanted every child to have hope for the future, and he believed that small acts of kindness could change lives. In the evenings, Mandela liked to read. Sometimes he chose history books. Other times he read simple stories. Reading helped him relax and reflect on how much he had learned and how much the world could still improve. He enjoyed writing too. Mandela sometimes wrote about his thoughts, dreams, and the lessons he wanted to pass on. He believed sharing wisdom was a way to make the world better, even after he was gone. There were also quiet moments when Mandela remembered old friends. He thought of those who had walked with him during hard times, and he felt thankful for their courage. These memories made him both happy and sad, but always grateful for the power of friendship. Sometimes Mandela felt the weight of his years. He grew tired more easily, and small pains reminded him of his long time in prison. Still, he did not complain. Instead, he focused on what he could do each day, never letting sadness slow him down for long. Mandela believed that true happiness came from serving others. Whether he was talking to world leaders or comforting a child, he gave the same attention and care. He knew that every person's story was important, and he wanted each person to feel valued. He believed that mistakes were a natural part of learning. Mandela often said that he made many mistakes, but he learned from each one. He encouraged others to do the same, to try again after falling, and to never be afraid of growing. As his hair turned white, Mandela became a symbol of wisdom and patience. People respected his calm voice and steady smile. He was a reminder that kindness and strength could live together in one person. Mandela saw that the world still had many problems. There were still people who suffered from unfairness and hate. But he did not lose hope. He taught that change begins in the heart and spreads through gentle actions, day by day. Each year, Mandela's birthday became a special day. People around the world gave their time to help others in his honor. Mandela felt proud and humble when he heard these stories. He believed that every small act of kindness made the world brighter. He enjoyed watching the world change. Mandela saw new leaders rise and new voices speak for justice. He felt joy when young people stood up for their beliefs, and he always encouraged them to follow the path of peace and understanding. In his quiet hours, Mandela often thought about forgiveness. He knew that holding on to anger only made life harder. He believed that forgiving others was a gift you gave to yourself, opening your heart to new hope and joy. Mandela also understood the power of teamwork. He never tried to do everything alone. Instead, he brought people together, trusting that many hands and minds could solve problems faster than one person alone. As he watched his grandchildren grow, Mandela shared stories from his life. He told them about the struggles, but also about the laughter and love that carried him through. He wanted them to know that every life is a journey full of surprises and lessons. When he visited the countryside, Mandela felt at home. He remembered the tall grass, the songs of birds, and the wide, open sky. These visits reminded him of where he came from and filled his heart with peace and strength. Mandela sometimes met with old friends from his village days. They sat together under the shade of trees, sharing memories and simple meals. The sound of their laughter filled the air, making Mandela feel like a boy again, full of dreams. In his heart, Mandela never forgot the lessons of his youth. He believed that even the smallest voice could bring big change. He wanted every child, no matter where they lived, to believe in their own worth and power. He continued to support projects that brought people together, sports, music, and community gardens. Mandela saw these as ways to build understanding, friendship, and peace. He believed that joy and teamwork could heal old wounds. Even when he was tired, Mandela welcomed new visitors, especially children. He listened to their questions and hopes. Their curiosity and joy inspired him to keep teaching, reminding him that each new generation could shape the future. Mandela taught that the world's problems could be solved with patience, honesty, and teamwork. He believed that peace is not just the work of leaders, but of every person, every day. He encouraged everyone to help in whatever way they could. His home was often filled with the sound of music and laughter. Family and friends gathered to celebrate simple moments, a shared meal, a new book, a birthday. Mandela believed these small joys were the true treasures of life. He often reminded others that real freedom meant the chance to live, learn, and grow. Mandela wanted every person to feel safe, to have food, a place to sleep, and the hope of a better tomorrow. He worked quietly to make this dream real. Even as he grew older, Mandela continued to learn. He watched the news, read books, and talked with young people. He wanted to understand the changing world, believing that a wise person never stops learning or listening. Mandela's story reached every corner of the globe. People shared his words, learned from his example, and took up the work of building peace. Mandela believed that everyone had the power to lead if they led with kindness and truth. He taught that even in dark times, hope is stronger than fear. Mandela showed that when people come together, respect each other, and work as one, they can change the world for the better, step by step. His health became weaker, but his spirit stayed strong. He smiled often and thanked his nurses and helpers. He told them that their kindness made each day brighter, proving that even small acts of care could mean the world. On his last days, Mandela's home was filled with gentle voices and warm hands. Family and friends sat by his side, sharing memories and soft laughter. Mandela felt calm, surrounded by love, his heart at peace with his journey. When news spread of Mandela's passing, people gathered together, some sang, some wept, and many shared stories. Across cities and villages, hope grew stronger, for they knew Mandela's dream lived on in each of them. Nelson Mandela's journey was not just about his own life. It was a path walked by many, full of challenge and hope. He showed the world that patience, kindness, and courage could build a better future for everyone. And so, the story of Nelson Mandela continues. In every hand that reaches out to help, in every heart that forgives, and in every voice that speaks for justice, his light shines on, guiding us all toward a world of peace, respect, and unity. After his passing, Nelson Mandela's presence was still felt everywhere in South Africa. In the early mornings, as the sun rose over the quiet streets, people remembered the gentle strength of the man who had led them through difficult times. His image appeared in homes, schools, and even murals painted on city walls. These pictures were more than just art. They were reminders of what one life, full of patience and hope, could achieve. In many families, parents shared Mandela's story with their children. They spoke about his days as a boy in the countryside, the hardships he faced, and the ways he chose kindness even when others chose anger. Around the dinner table, children listened carefully, learning that courage was not always loud and bold. Sometimes it was quiet and steady, like Mandela's own heart. Teachers used Mandela's life as a lesson in classrooms. They explained how he never stopped learning, no matter how hard things became. Students wrote essays about forgiveness, teamwork, and the value of never giving up. These lessons made students believe that, no matter their background, they could also help change the world for the better. Communities organized service days on Mandela's birthday, coming together to clean parks, paint schools, and plant trees. People of all ages worked side by side, laughing and helping each other. These small acts of kindness and unity made everyone feel that Mandela's dream for his country was still alive. In city squares, groups sang songs of hope and freedom. Elders remembered the long years of struggle, but they also spoke about the joy of new beginnings. Young people danced and clapped, honoring the journey that had brought them to this peaceful day. Even the quietest places in South Africa held traces of Mandela's influence. In libraries, children found books about his life and sat quietly, turning each page with care. They read about the power of standing up for what is right, even when the world seems against you. Mandela's foundations continued their work, building schools, supporting health programs, and offering help to families in need. Volunteers traveled to villages and towns, sharing knowledge and resources. They greeted each new challenge with patience and hope, inspired by Mandela's own example. Sometimes, visiting leaders from other countries came to South Africa. They walked the same streets where Mandela had walked, met the people he had loved, and learned from the peaceful spirit he left behind. They returned home, carrying new hope and ideas for their own countries. As the years passed, South Africa changed. Cities grew, new leaders took office, and the world faced fresh challenges. Yet Mandela's message of unity and kindness was never forgotten. On tough days, people remembered how he had never given up, and it gave them the strength to keep going. In rural villages, old friends of Mandela gathered under the same broad trees where they once listened to stories as children. They shared memories of his laughter, his humble meals, and his deep respect for every person he met. These memories kept Mandela's spirit close, as if he had only stepped away for a moment. Artists created songs, poems, and paintings about Mandela's journey. In theaters, actors told his story, filling the room with music and emotion. Each performance helped new generations understand what hope and forgiveness could do. Children who grew up after Mandela's time learned to see themselves in his story. They faced their own struggles at home and in school, but remembered Mandela's lessons: to be patient, to try again after failure, and to always treat others with respect. In the cities, parents taught their children to greet neighbors with smiles and to listen before judging. Mandela's belief in peace and understanding became part of daily life, shaping how people treated each other in small, important ways. On quiet afternoons, some people visited Mandela's former home, now a museum. They walked through rooms filled with his books, photos, and simple belongings. They stood in the gardens where he once sat, feeling the gentle power of a life lived with purpose. Visitors often left notes of thanks and hope at the museum door. Some wrote about their own dreams for a kinder world. Others promised to work for peace in their own communities, inspired by Mandela's gentle example. In schools across the country, children painted pictures of Mandela surrounded by flowers, books, and smiling faces. They used bright colors to show the hope he brought. Teachers hung these drawings on walls, reminding everyone that even the smallest hand could help build a better future. Mandela's story also reached people far beyond South Africa. In many countries, young and old alike read about his journey. They learned that, no matter where they lived, they could help make the world fairer and kinder. Some leaders faced difficult choices in their own lands. When they felt lost or afraid, they thought of Mandela and his steady courage. His story helped them find the strength to choose peace, even when anger and fear seemed easier. In families, parents remembered the strength Mandela found in forgiveness. They used his story to heal old arguments, teaching children to let go of grudges and to start each day fresh. In this way, Mandela's lessons shaped the hearts of people who had never even met him. Each year, new books and films were made about Mandela's life. These stories brought people together, sparking conversations about justice, fairness, and the power of working as one. Even in distant lands, Mandela's words inspired hope. In South Africa, the fields and hills Mandela once walked grew bright with new growth. Young people took up his work, leading projects to protect nature and build healthy communities. They remembered his love for the land, working together to keep it safe for future generations. As time moved on, Mandela's family carried on his work. His children and grandchildren spoke at schools, led charity events, and helped care for those in need. They felt proud to walk in his footsteps, sharing his message with everyone they met. Sometimes, storms came times when people disagreed or when old fears returned. In those moments, the memory of Mandela's calm voice and kind smile gave people courage. They remembered his promise that, if they worked together, any problem could be overcome. In busy cities, people of different backgrounds greeted each other as friends. They remembered Mandela's belief that everyone deserved respect, no matter where they were born or what language they spoke. These simple greetings brought peace to daily life. In times of sadness, when the news seemed full of trouble, many found hope by reading Mandela's words. They wrote his quotes on cards, hung them in offices and shops, and shared them with friends. His wisdom brought comfort, reminding people that hard times never last forever. When a child was afraid, parents reminded them of Mandela's courage. They told stories of how he faced darkness with hope, teaching that everyone feels fear sometimes, but bravery is choosing to go on anyway. In villages, families planted trees in Mandela's honor. As the years passed, the trees grew tall and strong, their branches reaching high. These trees became symbols of hope and growth, showing how one life could touch many others. Across the world, people celebrated Mandela Day by giving a little of their time to help others. Some read to children, others cared for the sick, and many cleaned up parks or shared food with neighbors. Each act, however small, carried Mandela's dream forward. And so, the journey that began in a quiet village continued, one heart, one act of kindness at a time. Mandela's spirit walked beside people everywhere, whispering that every life matters, every dream is worth chasing, and every day brings new chances to build a kinder world. Through his life and legacy, Nelson Mandela became more than a leader. He became a guide, a symbol of what is possible when hope is stronger than fear, and when patience, learning, and courage light the way forward. Even now, as new challenges arise and the world changes, Mandela's message lives on in millions of hearts, encouraging us all to listen, to forgive, to work together, and to never stop believing in the promise of a better tomorrow. Seasons changed over South Africa, and with every sunrise, Mandela's memory grew deeper in people's lives. Children walked to school along dusty roads, passing by murals of his smiling face, and sometimes they paused to touch the painted hand, as if to share their hopes for the day. Inside classrooms, teachers encouraged their students to share their dreams, no matter how small. Some children wished to be doctors, others teachers, a few wanted to help their villages as leaders. Each time a child hesitated, worried about failure, the teacher would remind them of Mandela's journey, how he too had faced doubts, how he too began with simple steps. In cities, adults gathered in community halls to discuss local problems and look for peaceful solutions. They remembered how Mandela listened before he spoke, how he welcomed many voices, even those who disagreed. They tried to follow his example, learning to work together with respect and care. Grandparents often told stories to the young ones in the evenings as fires burned low. They spoke of the days when the world seemed divided and how Mandela's patience helped heal old wounds. The children listened, eyes wide, asking questions about courage and forgiveness. The elders answered softly, reminding them that change begins in the heart. People honored Mandela in ways both big and small. On special days, they gathered in parks to clean up litter or plant flowers. On ordinary days, they showed kindness to neighbors and strangers, sharing bread, offering help, or simply listening when someone needed to talk. Mandela's words found new life in music and poetry. Young writers created songs inspired by his message, and choirs sang of hope and unity. These songs echoed in church halls and busy streets, lifting spirits and reminding everyone that joy was as important as justice. Leaders from around the world continued to visit South Africa, hoping to learn from the example Mandela set. They toured the countryside, walked through city markets, and sat quietly in the shade of old trees where Mandela once reflected on his own dreams. Each leader left with new ideas about peace and service. Mandela's foundations continued their quiet work, building libraries and providing books to children in remote villages. Young readers gathered under trees, their voices soft as they took turns reading aloud. Each page opened a window to new possibilities, and each book carried a piece of Mandela's hope into a new life. As Mandela's family grew, his children and grandchildren kept his teachings close. They helped care for the sick, organized sports for local youth, and shared stories at community events. Their gentle actions showed that Mandela's spirit still shaped each new day. On hot afternoons, people sat on porches and remembered the old days. They spoke about how far the country had come and how much work remained. They found strength in Mandela's example, believing that progress was possible as long as they worked together and kept hope alive. Sometimes, the world outside seemed troubled and full of conflict. News of distant wars or disasters reached even the smallest villages. Yet, when people felt afraid, they turned to Mandela's memory for comfort. His story reminded them that hope can survive even in dark times, and that every challenge brings a chance to begin again. In times of celebration, families gathered to dance and share meals, their laughter rising into the warm air. Mandela's favorite songs played on radios, and people of all ages joined in. The simple joys of music and friendship felt like a promise that the country's spirit would endure. Artists painted new murals in city neighborhoods, using bright colors to capture the dream of unity. Some painted children holding hands, others painted wide fields and blue skies. These images brought smiles to passers-by, who remembered the days when Mandela himself walked those same streets. Mandela's story traveled across borders, reaching people in places he had never seen. Letters and emails arrived at his foundations from children in other countries. They wrote about their own hopes, inspired by the tale of a man who chose love over anger and patience over fear. In small villages, elders taught children how to care for the land. They planted gardens and watched seeds grow into strong plants. The lessons of patience and careful work, learned from Mandela, shaped the way they tended their crops and built their homes. School teachers guided students to learn about the history of their country, not only through books but also through storytelling, music, and art. They invited elders to speak about their memories, making history come alive and helping children see themselves as part of a greater story. On quiet evenings, families sat together, sharing news of the day and listening to old radio broadcasts about Mandela's speeches. The gentle crackle of the radio mixed with the voices of children, weaving the past and present into a single, hopeful moment. As time passed, Mandela's story became part of the land itself. People named gardens, libraries, and playgrounds after him, not to honor just a man, but to keep his spirit alive in everyday places where people gathered to learn, play, and grow. When storms came, whether in the form of weather or difficult times, people leaned on each other, just as Mandela had taught. They remembered that every challenge could be met with teamwork, patience, and hope, and that a better day would always follow. Every year, new children were born, and their parents wished for them the same courage and kindness that Mandela had shown. These new lives carried with them the promise of renewal, as each generation added its own dreams to the journey begun so long ago in a quiet village. In every corner of South Africa and far beyond, Nelson Mandela's life continued to shape hearts and minds. His lessons in forgiveness, patience, and hope were passed down like treasures, each story building upon the last so that the journey of peace would never end. As night fell over the fields and cities, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter. Children closed their eyes, dreaming of the future, and in those dreams, Mandela's gentle spirit watched over them, still reminding all that every act of kindness, every step toward understanding, made the world a little better, day by day. As years gently moved forward, Mandela's legacy continued to touch every part of daily life. In city libraries, teenagers read quietly, their minds opening to ideas of unity and patience. In rural villages, grandparents planted new trees, reminding children how slow growth brings strong roots, just as Mandela once taught. Young teachers, who grew up with stories of Mandela, stood before their students with hope. They helped children from different backgrounds work together, showing that respect and listening could solve problems better than anger ever could. Small disagreements in the playground became lessons in forgiveness, each one a tiny echo of Mandela's spirit. On busy weekends, families visited museums and parks named after him. They paused to look at old photographs and read simple messages about justice, kindness, and service. Parents explained that even the bravest leaders began as children with dreams, and that greatness is built by small, honest choices every day. During community meetings, people discussed ways to help the elderly, care for the sick, or support local farmers. They remembered how Mandela believed real change starts with neighbors helping neighbors, and how a friendly smile can change the mood of an entire street. Artists found inspiration in Mandela's journey, painting murals filled with light, hope, and people of all colors standing side by side. Musicians wrote new songs, their voices lifting up messages of peace that spread from village squares to city stages. Sometimes the country faced new troubles, economic hardships, disagreements, and fears. Yet, at those times, people turned to Mandela's words and remembered his steady example. Leaders quoted his lessons about honesty, patience, and the courage to choose what is right, even when it is not easy. In their own small ways, countless people chose to carry Mandela's legacy forward. A child helping a friend up after a fall. A shopkeeper offering food to a family in need. A student standing up against bullying. These quiet moments, multiplied across the country, slowly built a society stronger and kinder than before. As time moved on, the story of Mandela did not fade. It grew richer, woven into the fabric of everyday life, whispered in morning greetings, celebrated in community festivals, and lived out in classrooms and family tables. The world kept changing, but the hope he planted remained. Mandela's story became a guiding light, not just for South Africa, but for people everywhere searching for peace and meaning. It taught that no person is too small to make a difference, no dream too simple to be worth chasing, and no hurt too deep to be healed with forgiveness. In every season, as children played in parks and elders watched over gardens, the spirit of Mandela lingered like a gentle windsoft, unseen yet always present, reminding each person that the journey toward kindness and justice never truly ends, but is carried on by every heart that dares to hope. And so, as the sun sets each day over the hills and towns he once walked, the promise of his life lives on, a quiet invitation for all to keep learning, keep forgiving, and keep building a world where everyone, no matter how humble their beginnings, can find dignity, peace, and joy. Thank you for letting me share this full, flowing, and gentle life story of Nelson Mandela with you.